Please give a warm welcome to the hosts of Alternate Ending.
So Sean, funny enough, we just missed one another at Sundance, which happens to be also Carrie's our last journey out into the world.
Trip.
Yeah, our last trip. We've been basically been.
Yeah.
I was going to ask, is that the last time you traveled out and about?
Yeah, I think it was last time I flew, and definitely the last time went anywhere, not just sort of family related in a car nearby.
Yeah.
Last time you probably shook a hand too. That's always
definitely.
That's like the weirdest adjustment for me still is like, like maybe somebody comes by or, drop something off. Like, I don't know, just that whole exchange of having to keep your distance from people is something I'm still not totally comfortable with. So
I know. So
weird
upsetting.
times. Weird times.
Well, congratulations on the film. So we regret that we weren't able to take it in with a live audience, because as many directors right now are facing that with their releases, don't have the opportunity to get the feel the vibe. And that Sundance trip was our first ever, and there's nothing like it. I certainly wish, for a number of reasons, that COVID ends, but certainly so that as one small reason is so that directors and filmmakers of all kinds can get the opportunity to relish their creation. The experience with a live audience, because there's nothing like it.
Yeah. Absolutely. And film festivals feel like they're getting more and more important too, like places where filmmakers can actually share work in community and with audiences, and feels like that's getting slimmer as time goes on. So
I think we'll just have to get more creative, I think.
Yeah.
But for us, we were able to catch the nest, which there's so much to unpack here with the movie. There's a lot going on in it. So I know, as the writer and director on it, I will leave it to you perhaps to maybe even summarize a little bit of what it's about. I have a lot to say about it. So a little bit for others who haven't seen it on what it's about.
It's always hard to boil it down for
me.
It's so funny. I think I spent as long writing the synopsis as I did editing the movie. So it's about a family in the mid 80s living in New York, and Rory, father and husband, played by Jude Law, wakes his wife up one day, played by Carrie Coon, and says, "I've got a job opportunity to move back to England, and we need to move." And they sort of abandon their peaceful life, and when they get to England, move them into a giant house that's way too big for them, and he's off in London starting this new job. And as the movie continues, the family sort of becomes more isolated from each other by living in this house, and the premise of the move turns out to not be what he said it would be.
That's good.
Yeah,
you did a good job.
So Jude and I are not just alike in appearance. His character in this is sadly, I resonated a lot, and having empathy for his character is hard. But I'm a schemer. I mean, I've convinced Carrie to start a film review website with me, and a film podcast, and she's a casual moviegoer, and originally was supposed to be with a friend. I'm a schemer. I'm always coming up with ideas. And
you're sharing something more glamorous. So I'll tell you the real facts of the matter. Early on, when we first started dating, it was all like wine and cheese and like fancy shows, and we'd go and do all this stuff. And then at one point he was like, I'm actually working on a CD. I'm like a musical CD. Like, maybe do you want to be a partner? And I was like, oh, this is really sketchy. And that's where it started. And so I empathized with Carrie Coon in this big time. And I was like, I don't think we're at that level yet where I'm interested in brokering a deal with you. But then on top of that, I'm gonna rat you out on this too, but I think it's totally relevant. So Rob books a trip to Alaska. And it's impromptu, and it's a surprise, and it's everything Jude Law would do in this movie. Books a trip. We get there. We haven't even gone on the trip, but we're at a restaurant like before we embark on the trip. And Rob had to split a $36 tab at a restaurant onto 2 credit cards.
I got us to Alaska, but we ran out of money when we got there.
I've been there, man.
I got to get out of here. And granted, this has been like 12 years ago. He's reformed. He is not necessarily this person, but this was an empathy trip for me too, for Carrie. Coon on the other end. I was like, ooh, there's some red flags with this guy.
Must have been fun watching it together.
It was a little stressful. It was a little.
Yeah, but you're like, who's gonna bring this up first? This reminds us of us.
But it's a period piece, and you said it in what is the U.S.'s like big consumerism, the 80s, where everybody was just trying to get the biggest, best stuff, and money was. Gordon. He's like a Gordon Gekko type of character. Where did you draw from? Because this is an original piece of work. Like, where did you get these characters from? They're so lived in and so authentic as individuals. Where did this come from a story perspective?
I explored my own childhood. That was a big part of it. And then, I don't know, it's happened so incrementally. Like I lived in England and moved to New York in the early 90s. And so I sort of reverse engineered that in a way to sort of look at I didn't live anything like this, but there was elements of this life from my childhood, lots of moving. And so, some of it is family stuff and others. And then as much as that, like, in my, while writing it, the script accompanied me through some major adult life changes. And it became as much reflection on childhood as it did on, marriage and business and business partnerships and, family. And so, yeah, it's a combination of all those things. And, with the characters, I think you just build them out, get an idea, latch onto a detail, and then add a detail to it, and then explore where they come from. And they just kind of build over time through the details.
Yeah, and it feels like it's those details that, like you said, if you're able to sort of build on those and some of your own experiences, and maybe it does become a hyperbole of certain things, or maybe the story twists in a way that's a little bit different. But to Rob's point and to what you said, it feels really lived in. It feels really rooted in just sort of an intimacy, like it just feels very intimate, like you're sort of watching a relationship sort of unfold. And I, in particular, loved the way that you set up the relationship and built the relationship as a viewer, because I think from where, I'll use their character names, but where Rory and Allison start, so Jude and Carrie, Coon, start at the beginning of this, you sort of see this dynamic, and you're sort of processing the dynamic along the way. He seems pretty attentive, bringing her coffee, and, she's kind of sleeping in, and you don't really have his whole story yet at that point. So you're thinking like, what is this? But even their interactions together just feel so authentic. And then it's interesting to me how you sort of unwind the characters, because then you start to see the dynamics a little bit differently later. And so I guess in the process of writing that, did that sort of unfold organically as you went, or was our intent as a viewer to see it that way?
Yeah. I really, I don't see a lot of loving married couples attracted to each other in movies. I think there's a real lack of that. And I wanted that. That's at their core. They're a very loving, and quite egalitarian. And, when it starts, like, he's doing the school drop and making breakfast, and for and working from home, and for a guy who works in that industry in the 80s, that's quite progressive. And she's running her own business. And so I wanted to start them in a place and then have that unfold and have her sort of sink back into more traditional gender roles of marriage for that time, and sort of how easy it is for them to slip back into that, because those are the worlds they came from, and to ask questions about, where do these come from? Are they ours? Are they society's? And just look at those roles, and then how to challenge those roles again. And so it's like a cycle, and I wanted to make it truthful, and I wanted it to be a fun loving relationship at times, and you could really see why they're together and why they stay together.
Well, I imagine with a script like this that the actors are just trampling one another to try to get on board with this. I view this as, you know, the two of the best performances that I've seen all year, and certainly in the discussion from an Oscar perspective, and the performances that are delivered because of it. How did you manage to get Carrie and Jude together on this project? I'd be really interested to know that.
I was working with my casting director, and we were throwing around names, and nothing was quite clicking. And then my casting director, Susan Shotmaker, I think she emailed me one day with just Coon. I think that's all it said in the email. And I was like, yes, of course it is. Why did we not think of this 2 weeks ago when we started this process? Not that it took very long, but yeah. And so I had met Carrie a couple times previously through friends. And so I just sent it to her and called her, and she responded. And I just knew she, you know, Allison's many things. And I wanted someone who could be many things in one role. And she can do that. Yeah, she's outstanding. And I knew that it would be unified and grounded. You know, she's got this real like Midwestern core that just like, I don't know, it's like an ease to it, you know, it's a real strength. And I just knew that was a big part that was of Allison that was scripted, was that kind of core. So, and then Jude, we sent the script to, and he was in LA, and we met, and I knew Rory does some, you know, questionable things, and I knew that I needed Rory to, even when he's doing questionable things, he believes that he's doing the right thing for his family. He believes that this will get them to where the best life for them. And so even though it's not, he believes it is. And so there has to be some love behind that. You know, there has to be some real love, and Jude is very, very loving, open, warm guy. And so that was all there. And I just knew, and very charming. And so, you know, he can play the charming note, and it's easy to follow. So I just felt like he was perfect. And I just had a feeling they'd be perfect together. I don't really know why, but I just did. And it worked out.
Yeah, they absolutely were. Their chemistry, you felt their love. It was very palpable.
Yeah.
And like you said, they just had an energy where when they were together, it was like you could tell that even though she was so mad at him, and vice versa, there's some things that she does in here that he's so mad at her too. Like you can feel the anger. And so it's one of those things where, you know, I don't think you can get that with everybody, that you can just sort of feel that spectrum of emotions together. I have to point out though, my all-time favorite scene of this movie, because I absolutely would do the same thing, is the dinner scene where I love it. I just love it when they're sitting and she just like pulls the curtain. Like it starts slow and you're like, is she gonna do it? Like, is she gonna rat this guy out? And then she absolutely does. And I was just like, the whole time I'm just like, slow clap.
So gratifying, isn't it?
It is. It is. That was the most gratifying moment of the entire movie for me. And I loved that. So I just had to call that out.
Well, because they're individuals like Rory's character, where, you know, when is it enough, and when do they? It's just they almost need to hit a rock bottom of some sort in order to learn anything, because if they're continuing to be successful and like hedging and then coming away with it as and becoming successful through it, is that like nothing is ever learned. I guess what's the takeaway that you're hoping that folks you know, in watching this get? Is there a specific kind of message that you'd like to have audiences walk away with?
No. I think I just wanted to make something about a family that felt, you know, real and complicated, and a family drama that reflects families and how complicated they can be. And the other thing I want to say about the actors that I felt was like, it's not easy to get actors who want to go to this place, you know, like they have to show some real ugliness and get into it. And a lot of people don't want to do that. So that's also, and talking to them right away, I just knew they wanted to go there, and that in its own is really special. And so, that's the overall thing. It's just wanting to go somewhere and raise these questions about how we operate and where these, where our dreams come from, where our dynamics come from, what are we chasing? What's this better life around the corner we always think is going to be there, and is it really better?
Yeah, there's a question that's asked to Rory towards the end, and it's a very pointed question, and he doesn't really have an answer for it, and that really stuck with me too, because it's a question that, again, somewhat relating to the character a little bit. I've asked myself that, and it's like, well, why am I doing this? Like, what why? So
maybe that's it. Like, if I had to boil it down, maybe that is it. Maybe that's the takeaway.
Yeah. I hope people do. If they find something in themselves in this character that they stop to really introspectively ask that question.
You do that. You do that.
And I want to bring it back to Carrie as well too. She she raises horses.
Oh gosh, that part.
Does she have experience with that? I know she's a Midwestern gal as well too, but it doesn't mean you know horses well. Did she have to learn any?
Yeah. She didn't know horses. She had some like more casual experiences growing up. I think they had a neighbor with some horses, but she learned to ride for this and also learned to teach, which also was even more fun for me to watch her. The scene where she teaches the riding lesson was just fantastic, because so much of that stuff was just picked up in her own lessons, and it's such a specific world, and I just wanted to get that right.
Yeah, I think you definitely did, in that. I think the other thing too with her, you talked about this a little bit earlier, of just sort of gender roles. I loved her strength of character. So she has to, in the beginning, she maybe seems like the one that's like being taken care of, but really at the end of the day, it's that, no, it's the one that she's the glue. She's the glue in this family that's holding it together, even though she probably wants to come unhinged. I mean, she's smoking 8 packs a day or something at this point for sure. But she is it. Like, she's the reason why they're still together as a family. She's the reason that, she's the extra cash. She's the one that's keeping the job. I love the fact that she goes out and gets this side job. Like, all those elements where she's just like, I'm going to get it done. I love how you built that around her, because it really empowered her character, and I think empowered, us as the viewer, just seeing that she has this ability to kind of rise above the complexity of her life that's going on at the time. So
yeah, she's very practical, but and also a dreamer in her own right, and that's I think that's tricky. Like a lot of written characters are sort of get boiled down to be one thing, especially in the development phase. If it's seen it happen. Luckily, I have great producers, and that doesn't happen. Didn't happen to me here, but I've seen that happen, where it's just like a complicated character, a complicated script can just get worn down by asking questions over time. That just and so I just wanted to embrace the complication of it.
One character or sort of character we haven't talked about is the setting of this. I honestly, there were points in time during the film watching of it, I got like a horror film sense. Yeah. And I don't know if that was something intentional, that you wanted there to be this imposing dread in the setting, and particularly the home in which they end up in that's not a VRBO destination or Airbnb destination for me.
Yeah, where did you find this place? It's
like a couple hours outside of London.
Oh
it's extraordinary. It's 750 years old. The same family's lived in it for over 400 years. So not only does it feel old and has all this history that feels like dense and thick in the air, but the family who live there know everything about all their ancestors, because they've always lived in one house. And some of the paintings on the walls are from the real family. And but yeah, there absolutely is a haunted house vibe, and that's very intentional. I wanted to create an atmosphere sort of a haunting without there being ghosts, because what they're being haunted by is the isolation that's created from this move, and the isolation that's created by keeping secrets from each other. And, it starts between Rory and Allison, and then Allison starts to feel it about her kids. And, her kids aren't saying to her what they're feeling. And so there's this whole unspoken, ghostliness surrounding them, so to speak. And then the mistrust starts to form, and, doors are left open and she doesn't know who's there. And so it was trying to manifest some of those haunting elements into a real place in a real way.
Well, you definitely got us. We just finished watching a lot of the the Bly Manor and all the Mike Flanagan.
I was like, it's for
haunted
sure
house stuff.
somebody. It's a
Here
ghost.
we go again.
It's for sure a dead body. There's somebody who's gonna come out and get them. But I was kind of I exactly what you said. I think what was haunting them was themselves, their own mistrust. You're so right. Like how it's like you plant the seed like that of, somebody not being honest with you, or you finding something out that's not true. And it's like, then you just start to question everything and other people and your own sanity, which I feel like is exactly what happens to these characters.
Yeah. And the more I think about it too, is it's almost like Jude's face. It's an addiction. Because the way I think about it for myself too is like it definitely feels like a addiction type movie in a sense of what he's drawn to this thing. He's what is he willing to do to compromise it and puts his family at risk. And there's just so much going on. We're very excited to bring it to our audience and share it with them as well too. So congratulations again on all the buzz it's getting on the release.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, have you managed to get the cast and crew back together for any type of celebratory thing, even virtually?
No, just at Sundance. Luckily we had Sundance, because a lot of films coming out this year didn't even have that. But we've been doing a lot of Q&As together. So it's good to see them. Yeah.
Well, we hope to see you at a future Sundance, either virtually or in person.
Too.
If anything, hopefully,
nice.
I don't know what Oscar night will be like, but I'm really pulling for you all there on that end as well too, because just two fantastic performances that are certainly well deserved of those accolades.
Oh, thanks a lot. Appreciate that.
Well, thanks so much for the time, Sean.
Thank you, guys.
All right, take care.
Thanks.
Nice to see you.
Bye.
Bye.